second and third chromosome, which in primates are totally separate and function separately. But in human beings, guess what? They have been fused together, end to end.
Right.
Fused together, end to end, perfectly, seamlessly, so that they function, so that they still function, but they just take up one place, where they used to take up two places in the process of mitosis. Now, what does that mean? It means that somebody needed us to have 46 chromosomes so they could mate with us when they were making us. They needed us to have 46 chromosomes, so they took the creatures of Earth that they were using as a model, and they adjusted it in a genetics lab so that it would work to suit their purposes, to suit their needs. And so we were created, as it says in the Bible, and is written on stone in the Sumerian tablets. We shall create the Adamu in our own image after our own likeness. And this is what the Anunnaki supposedly said, and they did that. That is why we look so very different from primates. We're not primates. We're them. We have a little bit of primate in us, even though you have that only 3% difference with chimps. But you're talking about 90 million, approximately 90 million base pairs. That's a lot of base pairs. But what it also says is that life out there is pretty much ubiquitous as it is on the Earth. It's all built around the same base pairs, the same genes, the same chromosome type arrangements. And it's probably an explanation for why so much of our genetic package is junk. Like as much as 96% of what we carry and what our cells keep maintaining is junk. Isn't junk. It's there for a reason. It's just science doesn't understand or know what the reason is. But it's probably part and parcel of allowing tremendous flexibility in the altering of us by whoever does the altering. Not just us, again, of other creatures out there, of all life out there. I don't believe, after a lot of study, I don't believe there is any evolution at all on the macro level. None at all. Meaning from species to species to species to species. I do think there is microevolution within species. Darwin, clearly showed that with his finches, with the tortoises, and, you can see it with dogs and cats and everything else. There is variation within limits.
But they don't.
Everything.
But
there's
they
no
don't.
transformation from one thing into another thing.
Yeah,
that doesn't happen.
I see. That's fascinating. So this is so the in order for procreation to occur, it has to do with the chromosomes and the number of chromosomes. So the alleged interferers, as it were probably of the same amount of chromosomes as we were changed to then, 46, I guess.
Exactly. That's what I think. Yeah.
Wow, fascinating. There's so many roads here to take. Who were these guys, and how do you have a theory even how far back this might have occurred?
Well, yes. In my book, Everything You Know Is Wrong, which, by the way, if people are interested in it at this point, they'll have to buy a used version because the new version, the updated version, is not going to be available until October sometime. So I'm sorry for that. But in that book, in Part 4, I give kind of a condensed version of the explanation for it, the full, much more detailed explanation that's given by Zecharia Sitchin in his famous book, The 12th Planet. So if anybody wants to read the basic text that gives this information about the Anunnaki and Nibiru and what the Sumerian tablets say about these things, you get a book called The 12th Planet by Zecharia Sitchin, which is much detail given, or you get my book, Everything You Know Is Wrong, and in Part 4 of it, I give the condensed version as part of what I talk about in the book. But in any event, the time frame, well, just for one example, in the tablets, which were written or date back to around 5,000 years ago, 4, 5, 6,000 years ago, in that range, they say that the Adamu, us, the human beings, well, I mean, where do you think the name Adam comes from in the Bible?
Yeah, that's
a lot
right.
of it is taken, a lot of the Old Testament, and particularly Genesis, is taken from the earlier tablets that were written by the Sumerians, and it came down, quote, written in stone. I mean, the hallmark of truth in the old days was it's written in stone. Well, people didn't actually write in stone. They didn't carve it out like we do, carve out words on tombstones with marble. They didn't do that. They wrote it in stone, but the way they did that was they wrote it on soft clay at first. They would take clay, and then they'd write it, and then they'd put that in a kiln, and they'd bake it and turn it into stone. And then they are stone tablets now.
That's right.
And so one of the things that they say is that they created us. They created the Adamu about approximately 200,000 years ago. Now, when that was first talked about, Sitchin wrote his book in 1976, and people, critics would just say, "Oh, please, utterly, utterly ridiculous." It's clear that human beings have evolved for millions of years, right? 200,000 years? That's ridiculous. No way. Then comes 1986, 10 years later, and they begin to open up mitochondrial DNA, human mitochondrial DNA, which comes from mothers, and they made the incredible discovery at the time. You may remember, if you're old enough, the amount of incredible publicity about this. They found out that indeed human beings, our gene package, looks as if it extends back in time no further than about 200,000 years. And furthermore, and you can see the book is out, it's called, The Seven Daughters of Eve. It seems as if all human beings track down or can trace back genetically themselves to one of 7 different original groups.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Guess what else? The Sumerians wrote that there was finally, after, as they were creating us, there was finally 7 successes between 7 females and 7 males. That's how it all started.
Wow, really?
Now,
that's fascinating.
What are the odds on this? What are the odds on this? This is incredible.
Yeah.
And is this widely known? Is this talked about? No, it's not. Because of, again, what it means to science and religion and government. It's just things they are not ready to deal with until it gets absolutely crammed down their throats, and they don't have any choice, and then they will deal with it. But until then, they're going to just pretend that it doesn't exist, and even though it does.
Wow, and you also, I mean, beyond human beings then being manipulated or being brought forward, as it were, you also mentioned the genetic experimentation of plants and other species on this planet. I mean,
animals, sure, domesticated plants and animals. Well, yeah, it's clear they don't have, they didn't develop here naturally. You can trace them back. I go into the details of it in, again, Everything You Know Is Wrong, with plants, and you have, it's a little harder to explain, to explain in terms that people can understand, because you have to talk about genetics, you have to talk about multiple chromosomes, and a number of issues. But just, for example, we're told that for say grains and grasses, right? That the grains and grasses of old that spawned that are the progenitors of modern day seeds that we use, like oats and wheat and barley and things like that.
Yeah.
They all work for us now. They're fine. We can plant them. We can harvest them and all that. We are told, because all of these out of the blue in a period between about 10,000 years ago and about 5,000 years ago. There have been no new ones since, but somehow these Stone Age farmers and animal husbandry people could do this, could create these creatures. And they expect us to believe this, that somehow somebody looked at a grass seed that's the size of a pepper flake and somehow got the idea that, well, if we pull out the biggest ones of these and plant them and then pick out the biggest ones that produces and plant them and pull out the biggest ones that produces, over time, over thousands of years, we're going to get a product that will be big enough for us to see easily, to handle with our hands easily, and that somehow along the way the biochemistry is going to be changed such that the product will be something that we can eat and digest and our bodies can use. Because right now, while we're starting this project, it's just grass, and our bodies can't use them, and it's grass that animals eat. But if we undertake this process of slowly evolving these grass seeds, it's going to turn into a grain that we can use and that our bodies can assimilate. And we're expected to believe that somehow this was pulled off by these people. Now, in the same way that religion requires and turns to miracles to explain, the loaves and fishes and walking on the water and all the miracles that you read about in the Bible, they're no different than the scientific miracles that we are expected to believe. And this is one of those scientific miracles. It just happened. Take it on faith, because we have these things now. We don't allow any outside intervention. So the only people that could have done it were these Stone Age people from 10,000 to 5,000 years ago. So we can't imagine how, but they did it somehow, because we can't allow anything else to be considered as a possible source of these products. And so there you go. People just go about in a daze believing this garbage, that it could have happened when it absolutely could not have happened. These things had to be genetically engineered in a lab. The people who came had to look at the grasses and grains that were here and say, what can we turn this stuff into? And they would do it, because you can track back to the origin seeds or plants or whatever of just about everything. Now, some you can't. Some there are no like bananas, for example. Just they come out of nowhere, but they're incredibly good, wholesome foods, and you have some things like that. And the same thing goes with animals, domesticated animals. Like, for example, the cheetah. The cheetah is the first, one of the very, very first, one of the earliest. It's in every early civilization that we have. It's with the Sumerians, with the Egyptians, Greeks, Romans. Everybody has cheetahs. They go way back, right? But guess what about cheetahs? They are all virtually clones. When they started doing analysis of them, they found out that no matter where they are in the world, and they come from Asia and they come from Africa, they are basically genetically, you could skin one, pretty much skin a cheetah from Asia, and skin one from Africa, and swap their skins and stitch them back together, and they would heal up and be okay. That's how close they all are genetically. But guess what else? A cheetah is a genetic combination of a dog and a cat.
Really?
It has a dog's feet. It has the heavy pads, hard pads of a dog's feet. Because why? It runs so fast, and it makes such sharp turns. If it had soft feet, it would just slip. Couldn't do it. Couldn't do what it does. It had to have dog feet, so it's got dog feet. It doesn't have retractable claws like cats have.
Okay.
It's susceptible. Cheetahs are susceptible to diseases that are specific to both cats and dogs. Now, most people are not aware of this at all, but still, a cheetah is a very distinct and unusual animal designed to do one thing, and that